Hello and welcome to Wishful Thinking. I honestly don't know how to start this. I have honestly genuinely prepared so much for this episode. I have a notebook full of notes and my laptop full of notes. I just have so much information and such a lifelong story to tell you guys today. Might be a little bit of a long one, so sit down, grab a snack, chillax, or try to at least. If you read the title, you are correct. I have OCD and I was recently diagnosed, so I am honestly a newbie. I'm an OCD newbie, which apparently that's an actual thing. There are levels to OCD, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. Also, I'm obviously not a professional, so if this episode sparks ideas of potentially having OCD, talk to a professional. Please don't talk to me. I can't diagnose other people. I'm not qualified to do that, but I do recommend doing your own research if you feel so inclined. I will also have a bunch of links in the description for every potential mental health crisis that you may have, and also the resources that I personally use as I share my story. So we today will be touching on how I got to this point, basically my entire mental health journey through these 21 years of my life thus far, and also a little bit about OCD because throughout this process I have learned that there are so many misconceptions, obviously among the general public, but also in therapeutic spaces. There's a lot of misconceptions there too, so I would like to clear them up for anybody who has a misconception of OCD like I did, because I think it really truly helps people to learn about these things and also to learn about other people's experiences. So even if you don't experience OCD symptoms, hopefully a part of this story inspires you, or I just think it's so freeing and it's like a weight off my chest, honestly, to say it out loud. Since been getting diagnosed, it's been so satisfying for some reason telling people here and there. Okay, granted, at this point in my life, I've been diagnosed for 3 weeks. I've told 3 people. So I've told one person per week. Actually though, that's not even a joke. But now I will be telling a bunch of people about it. But it feels so good because I want people to know this thing about me. I hate that there's a stigma around mental health and talking about it and having a mental health disorder. I think everyone probably has a mental health disorder of some kind. Maybe that's an over exaggeration, but genuinely, I think there's a mental health crisis out in the world. And I obviously understand that I am so beyond privileged to be able to have the access and amount of resources that were at my disposal throughout this journey. Obviously, if I didn't have the access, I wouldn't have had the certainty and reassurance of getting an actual diagnosis. And I understand that some people don't have that luxury. So, it just kind of sucks, to be honest. But besides that, there's also so much stigma around mental health. And I think that by talking about it more and sharing my experience, I can help at least break down the stigma a little bit for some people, potentially, maybe. So yeah, let's just hop right into it. Now, a little bit about myself personally before we get into this. I have always been obsessed with labels. I really can't tell you why, but I like feeling put into a box. It sounds limiting, but it's so identity affirming. Yes, I am all these different things. I grew up being multiracial, and so that was a big part of my identity, a big part of my label. I'm part Filipino and part Panamanian and part white. And I just grew up having to constantly tell people, when you're racially ambiguous, people will constantly ask you what are you, And so I grew up being a identity first, label first type of person, and I just became obsessed with figuring myself out from a very early age. Once I discovered personality tests and astrology, oh my god, that I ran with that shit. MBTI hates to see me coming. I'm a Taurus. I just love labels. I love labeling myself and categorizing myself into these different boxes that I fit into. And naturally, it kind of led me to becoming fascinated with psychology because psychology, there's so many facets to it. Okay. It's such a broad area of study. There's so much to it, but I'm obsessed with understanding myself. I've always been obsessed with understanding what goes on inside of here, to be honest, because I think from my from an early age, I knew that there was like a screw loose or something wrong with me or like something off with me. Maybe I didn't know there was something necessarily wrong with me yet, but I knew that there was something off with me for sure. Okay, because I honestly couldn't tell you why, but I just didn't feel like I just felt like I wasn't like other girls. Like I just felt like not like other girls. You know what I mean? I always felt like I was almost playing a character in my life. And I don't know. I think like everyone has like their weird, awkward phase throughout growing up, you know? It's just growing up is awkward and weird and hard. And I just always felt like I was playing along with what other people were interested in. And maybe I kind of struggled with having a sense of self because of that. Enough of the tangent. My point is, I always felt like there was something off with me, and I quickly grew into being obsessed with psychology and identity labels and all these sorts of things. Okay. You guys can see how getting diagnosed was huge for me. Early childhood experiences, whatever, who cares? It's COVID-19 pandemic time, okay? This is honestly, truly, truly, truly when my mental health journey starts. And by starts, I mean like goes down the toilet. Obviously, the pandemic was like a hard time for a lot of people, but especially me. Besides losing a grandparent, I was also just dealing with a lot at the time. I socially isolated myself from my entire like social circle at the time for some fucking reason. Like obviously, I'm practicing social distancing. I'm quarantining with my family at home. Also, I'd like to preface this by saying during the COVID-19 pandemic, I was 16 years old. 15, 16. I socially isolated myself. I did not interact with anyone I knew for the most part. Like I had one friend that I would talk to like maybe once or twice a month, maybe. But besides that, I genuinely like had nobody. Oh my gosh, I had nobody. I was genuinely just going insane in my room. And around this time, I, for the first time, questioned my sexuality. I've never questioned it up until this point, to be honest. Like, I always knew that I was attracted to men. And so I just kind of was like, okay, like this, let's just roll with it. But having so much time by yourself to like sit and ponder who you are, what you like, what your interests are, um, it really leads you to questioning who you like too. And this was the first time I kind of recognized in myself that I had an attraction to women. Okay. And it was so, in hindsight, it was so clearly obvious to me because all of my favorite characters, like in shows and movies, were just the girls that I thought were hot or attractive or cute or whatever, you know? Like I had a fat crush on Jade from Victorious. I don't think I'm alone in that, but I had a fat crush on her. Also, Beck. Oh my God, Jade and Beck. Okay, this is such a side note, but I used to be obsessed with the episode where Jade and Beck break up and then they like get back together and they have this whole like makeout scene in Beck's trailer park. Oh my God, I remember I told a friend this and her older sister, and they both like that. Mind you, I was probably like 7, 8 years old. I told them like I love this episode, and they looked at me like I was a freak because there was like just so much kissing. But it's just like, guys, like this is a bisexual dream. I mean, I didn't say that or know that at the time, but like, you know, the clues were there throughout my entire life to figure this out. But this was the time when I finally grappled with the fact that I was bisexual. Yeah, I just had a lot of realizing things about myself at this time, and it just made me feel so incredibly anxious. Oh my fucking God. I have never been more anxious in a period of my life than for those like 2 years of the pandemic. It was so insane. Yeah, I had no one to talk to, so naturally I decided to talk to my mom about this. Now, I love my mom to death, but there is a generation and cultural gap between us. And so telling my mother I was bisexual was not the best experience in the world, okay? I kind of was told to like, as long as you marry a man, it's okay. Okay, like she's not homophobic, but just don't act on those urges, girl. Okay. So, anyways, I just was like, okay, I guess I just won't be bisexual. I'll be straight, but like have bisexual thoughts. Like, okay, that's fine. And I was, again, struggling with a lot of other things at the time. And I think I kind of had a problem of confessing things to my mother at this time because who the fuck else was I gonna talk to? Who was I gonna talk to about these things? I literally decided that there's just no one else in my life that I could talk to, so I guess I have to talk to my mother. But it felt almost like re-traumatizing myself over and over again. It sounds like a little bit dramatic, but it's not. Okay, it's not. I was re-traumatizing myself through having these like, honestly, to be 100% transparent, these were like terrible fights, okay? Like, oh my god, like two bullheads butting, okay? Me and my mother are both two very stubborn people in two very different ways. It's terrible, okay? And I don't think it's a isolated experience to have conflicts with your mother, but being stuck in the house with her and also having no one else to talk to for emotional support, oh my god. Oh my god. Like you would go mad. Naturally you just would go mad experiencing this, right? Anyways, so one day I'm having a talk slash potentially maybe argument with my mother. Could not tell you what it was about because there was like 100 million things it could have been about. I genuinely have no idea. Also, side note, around this time, I also started self-piercing myself. My mother was not happy about this, okay? But just adding on to the list of things that she could be upset with me about. But I digress. So one day we were having a conversation, potentially slightly emotionally charged, very likely emotionally charged. And I had a panic attack. Woo! I'm so sorry. That was probably really loud. I had a panic attack. And I would just like to preface this by saying that I do not have a panic disorder to my knowledge. This panic attack for me was a very isolated incident, and we'll get into it, but I haven't had a panic attack since then up until recently. Anyways, so yeah, I had this panic attack with my mother in the room. Terrible, by the way. Having a panic attack in front of someone, oh my god, because a panic, if you don't know what a panic attack feels like, first of all, your heart's racing like 100 miles an hour. Your breathing is out of control. It genuinely feels like you're gonna die. Like your vision's gone fuzzy. Like your like waterfalls are coming out of your eyes. Every like possible visceral reaction is happening inside, outside of your body. It's terrible. And I'm just like curled up into a ball, like wanting to die. Okay. My mother doesn't know how to handle this. Also, like naturally, she just doesn't have an understanding of what a panic attack is. You know, I think a lot of older people, not to call my mother old, but like, you know, she's a part of a different generation and there's a lot less aware of these types of mental health breakdowns. You know, they might think that I'm having a stroke or something. So anyways, she calls my dad into the room, even makes the situation even worse. And then I have an aunt who lives across the street or like a block away, and she used to be a nurse. So they call her over to the house. Oh my fucking god. Terrible. This is all terrible, by the way, for my panic attack. It's only making it worse. Adding 3 people into a room with you having a panic attack and they're just like all staring at you, trying to figure out what the fuck to do. Oh my god, it was terrible. Eventually, my aunt was actually able to calm me down, despite having a fucking audience of people spectating my complete and utter mental breakdown. Despite having 3 people witness my complete and utter mental breakdown, she was able to calm me down. And from this point on, my parents decided to enroll me in therapy. Yay! Yay. First time ever trying therapy in my life. Yay. After a panic attack in front of my family, my entire family. So I start therapy, and this was a terrible time to start therapy, okay? Everything about this period in my life was just the wrong time, okay? And granted, like in hindsight, it's not the wrong time because it led me to get to where I am now, blah, blah, blah. But everything during the pandemic just was terrible. I had a therapist and she was so dismissive of my experiences, okay? I did not even scratch the surface of my personal mental issues with her. And she would just continuously tell me that my feelings were valid and I was probably experiencing anxiety because of the pandemic. Like, okay, I get that there's a pandemic, but not everything in my life right now revolves around the pandemic, okay? Like, it's just not, I just felt like she was continuously telling me that my issues were because of the pandemic. Like, COVID did this to me. You got the COVID mental health bug. You have COVID anxiety, okay? Like, your shit's not real. It's just because you're stuck inside. You're just going crazy because you're stuck inside. Like, yes, but what else? I think there's so much more that we could explore and dive into beyond that. So me and that therapist did not last. I think I quit after 2 to 3 sessions with her because I low key hated her guts. Sorry, queen, you just were not the right therapist for me. And I think an important thing about therapy that people should know, if you've never been in therapy before, is that your first therapist is probably not going to be the right one for you. If they are, like, more power to you. Like, that's like hitting gold. That's like, what's the saying? You probably got lucky, because I feel like on average people go through multiple therapists before they found the right one. Me, I just decided to quit, okay? And my parents didn't tell me anything. They were just like, "Okay, you went to therapy. I guess you're better." And I kind of gave myself that same attitude. I was like, "I don't need this damn therapist." And the funny thing is, I fully interested in psychology, fully believe in therapy, but just decided it was not for me at the time. And I also think that's another important factor in therapy, like whether or not you're ready to like accept and receive help from others is also so important, because if you are forced into therapy by other people, it might not be the best experience. But if you decide to pursue it for yourself and for your own well-being, you're probably going to have better luck. And you'll probably have more motivation to seek out a new therapist when the first one doesn't work out, which I did not have. I did not have that inhibition in me. I just decided that, I had this mental health breakdown. At least I had that release of emotions and I tried therapy. It didn't work out. I'm just going to be fine now. And I decided I was fine. So this is where we are going to fast forward. So we are now done with the COVID pandemic. We are also now done with high school. I finished my last 2 years off. My last 2 years of high school were also low-key traumatizing. I will say I could have so many stories alone of just like what happened to me in my last 2 years of high school. We're also going to skip past my 2 years in community college. Not really anything interesting to note at that time. But last year, I went away to college for the first time and I moved into this bedroom that we are in right now, which is my college apartment bedroom. I just felt like I had a lot to work through and I felt a lot more safe and comfortable now not living at home. There's a lot of stigma against mental health or around mental health. You have to have something wrong with you to get help. And while I do feel like I have something wrong with me, or I did at the time, I also am a firm believer of like, it doesn't hurt to get therapy. Even if you don't feel like you need it, you might find out things about yourself that are areas that you could work in. If you're in any way not satisfied with your life and you have access to therapy, I highly recommend giving it a try with all of the discretions that I said in mind. Your first therapist might not work out and like you have to be ready to accepting help, all these things. But I really can help you. And in my past year of having therapy, I had 2 different therapists. They were both great. I was able to select them myself this time. And it was just a much better experience. I was older. I felt like I could advocate for myself more. Just so many positives all around, to be honest. And with each of these therapists, we set therapeutic goals, we met them. It was honestly genuinely great. I always felt like these therapists that I had at the time were not getting to the roots of my issues, because the problem was we would meet my therapeutic goals and then I would have different things to talk about. And the funny thing is I would actually have too much to talk about. Every week that I would go into therapy, I would have a notes app list on my phone of topics to talk about. And every week we would not even scratch the surface. We could talk about maybe my top 2 notes. And then besides that, everything else is like for the shitter, because we're only meeting for an hour a week. It felt like it got to a point with each of these therapists where I kind of would plateau in progress. Like I got all that I could out of them. And now I had to seek a new therapist. For my last therapist, she was the one that I had when I kind of started my actual OCD journey and discovering that I had OCD. So let's get into that. I've done a lot of talking about my mental health history. I have not done a lot of talking about OCD. So if you are waiting for me to start talking about OCD, here it is. I first discovered OCD, which, okay, I knew what OCD was for like so much of my life, but I always envisioned OCD in the stereotypical way that everyone else does. Like, oh, I'm a little bit OCD because I like to clean, or I like to have things neat and tidy. Like, I had a very stereotypical view of OCD, and it's probably not much different from your current view of OCD. That was my view of OCD for the longest time ever. I would also like to note that psychology is very vast, and I think some people think that if you are studying psychology, you just know everything about every mental disorder ever. First of all, I don't really know a lot about the different mental disorders. I've heard a lot about anxiety and depression and autism and ADHD, like the four most common disorders that you encounter, but there's so many psychological disorders, and I feel like they only scratch the surface in university, and so I never really understood or had a class where I learned about OCD in particular. So, where did I learn about OCD? How did it come into my brain? How did I have that thought of like maybe I have OCD? I watched this video on YouTube. I will have it linked down below if you are interested, because it's actually a pretty great video. If you are interested in this video, I highly recommend this video that I'm going to talk about in a second. Probably a lot better produced than this one. But I watched this video called Why I Went to a Mental Hospital by Nikki Caron. I think I said her last name right. I have no idea. But she is like this blue-haired baddie girl. I remember seeing her on TikTok during the pandemic, funny enough. She was in a very public-facing relationship with this evil, terrible man. And obviously, when they were popular online, people did not know that at the time. But she's since, talked about escaping that terrible relationship, which great for her. Throughout this video, she essentially explains what led her to hospitalizing herself in a mental institution. And while I don't relate to that experience specifically, she has a section of her video where she talks about having OCD. And this is the first time I truly got a different perspective on what OCD could be. I think that Nikki put it best. OCD is essentially the boy who cried niche. Because if you don't know, OCD has a bunch of subtypes. So many subtypes. Okay, you can have OCD about basically anything, and it's just a disorder with infinite possibilities, basically. For one example from Nikki's video that I actually kind of relate to was her describing sexuality OCD, and in her experience, which is kind of similar to mine, we are both women who identify as bisexual, and at the time she was in a relationship with a man. I'm currently in a relationship with a man. And she would describe having these reoccurring thoughts about being a lesbian. Okay. And I, too, have those thoughts sometimes. Despite the fact that I have been very stable and secure in identifying as bisexual for the past 5 years. Okay. I have felt very strongly about being bisexual for the past 5 years, and yet in my 3.5 year long relationship, I will still continuously have thoughts of, am I a lesbian? Am I actually attracted to this man? The answer is yes, but I just have so many like doubts in my mind for some reason. I just think that I don't actually know myself, even though I've spent so many fucking years trying to figure out myself. I remember watching that video, and she planted the inkling of OCD in my mind. At the time, I related to her describing what her experience with sexuality OCD was, but I did not clock it as OCD in myself. I was just like, oh, isn't this normal, like questioning of your sexuality? Like that's normal. Girl, it's not normal. You've been bisexual like since you figured it out. You haven't like changed your mind. Why would I change my mind now? I don't understand why I question myself so much. And the thing is, also, when I was discovering if I was bisexual, I was struggling so much because I also was questioning if I even actually was attracted to women. Have you seen a woman? Of course I'm attracted to them. What the fuck? Anyways, this video did help me along my journey though, because it allowed me to start recognizing OCD in my mother. It was kind of something that was almost so obvious that I couldn't believe I didn't recognize it sooner. But it makes sense because if you're growing up with someone with a mental disorder, you probably are just used to those behaviors. You think it's just a quirk about them and not psychologically induced. And so I started to recognize that my mom had OCD. She actually, like, it was like a needle found in a haystack. No, it was like hay found in a haystack, because she is the most stereotypical depiction of OCD I have ever encountered. It was actually so abundantly clear to me after watching this video, because despite Nikki opening my views up on what OCD can be, I kind of recognized that my mother has the most stereotypical form of OCD. She obsessively cleans, she has to have things put a specific way, and there's just like a lot of other little quirks about her. I would also like to say that my mother's not officially diagnosed with OCD, but if I have OCD, she definitely has OCD. Hello. Oh my God. Anyways, but yeah, I kind of cracked the code. I was like, my mom has OCD, okay? Growing up with someone who has OCD, it feels like their compulsions are normal, because it's just something that you're almost being taught, especially when it's a parent. You're just being raised by them, and you think that this is just how you're supposed to naturally operate through life. So from this point forward, I'm like, okay, my mom has OCD. What the fuck do I got? What do I have? And I just had the OCD inkling in the back of my mind for quite a while, for probably months after watching that video. But never once did it cross my mind that I could potentially have OCD. OCD can be so many different things. It can present so many different ways. And so it's actually pretty almost difficult to relate to someone else's OCD experience, because, like I mentioned, it's boy who cried niche. Like, there's so many subcategories of OCD that you can have so many different types, so many different compulsions, like all these different things. As I mentioned, I very recently discovered I have OCD, okay? And the final catalyst of me clocking myself was Olivia Rodrigo's new album, You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. I have always been a big Olivia Rodrigo fan, okay? Like, for my entire life, I've been an Olivia Rodrigo fan since day one. I watched her on Bizarre Vark, I watched her on High School Musical, the series, such a long title. And then I've, been following her for her entire music career. I love Olivia Rodrigo. I could go on and on about how I love Olivia Rodrigo. I've always related so much to her, and also I'm so close in age to her that whenever her albums come out, I'm like the perfect age. You know what I mean? I'm like the age she was when she was writing this shit, so I just relate so heavily. So her new album comes out, naturally I listen and I'm obsessed. I love every song on the album, but there's a couple songs in particular that really just like read me to filth. The two particular songs that I would say those is The Cure and What's Wrong With Me. I talked about What's Wrong With Me in a previous video, but I've always asked myself that question for basically my entire life. Like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? I've asked myself that question basically my entire life. But for The Cure, it also relates so heavily to me because I'm currently in like a happy, loving, long-term relationship with my boyfriend. And it's sometimes, and I kind of have recognized that, yeah, like you cannot be cured by another person. Your internal issues are, they're still there, they're still present, and you can't like fix yourself just because you love someone else. It's just, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I've obviously like known that for quite a long time being in this relationship. But I just relate so heavily because before I was in a relationship, I always felt that like finding my other half, my missing piece, would fix me. And it just hasn't. It hasn't, and that's okay. But you know what can fix me? Therapeutic treatment. I opened TikTok. I opened that damn fucking brain rot app. My feed was honestly flooded. I don't know what I did to get on this side of TikTok, but my feed was flooded with people talking about like so much discourse about how Olivia Rodrigo's album sounds like relationship OCD, which is another type of OCD, where essentially you are just constantly having doubts about your relationship, a lot of doubts, having a lot of uncertainties, a lot of fears about your relationship. So I learned about relationship OCD shortly after that album coming out, and it literally was like a mirror in my fucking face. Like, hello, you guys cannot be telling me that this song and this album that I relate so heavily to is like, it sounds exactly like OCD. From this point on, I just started getting a lot more videos on my For You page just about OCD. Forget the Olivia Rodrigo of it all. I just had so many videos on my For You page about OCD. It was getting scary because I was literally relating to every other one. I was like, okay, I can't have, like, at this point, I'm either like going crazy or I actually have OCD. Cause like, I'm just, like, at this point, I'm like, I'm either convincing myself that I have OCD or I actually have it. And I'm just like finally fucking realizing it. Okay. So yeah, it kind of led me down a really big OCD spiral about OCD. OCD became one of my fucking obsessions. On that note, it's about time that we start getting into the actual information about OCD. One of my compulsions, which I will also talk about what compulsion is researching. I love researching things. It's actually it's a little bit debilitating because that's kind of what compulsions are. I love researching things. It's so fun to me, but also it's just like it's out of a desire to like know things immediately. I have to figure this out right fucking now. And so naturally, like I had an obsession of like, do I have OCD or do I not have OCD? I have to figure this out right now. And so I do all my research. But also I've done a little bit more research since then for this episode. So I could share with you guys some facts about OCD that have kind of led me to figuring out, shit, I really do have OCD. Anyways, so let's talk about, first of all, what OCD is. I've ran those 3 letters to the fucking ground, but what do they stand for? If you don't already know, I've kind of hinted at it. It stands for obsessive compulsive disorder. So you have an obsession, then you have a compulsion in response to that obsession, and that's the disorder. Okay. Anyways, all my information that I'm about to spit on you is from the International OCD Foundation. That's where my information is from. You can check it out for yourself in the link below. But most people have obsessions, thoughts, and or compulsive behaviors at some point in their lives. But that does not mean we all have some OCD. In order for a diagnosis of OCD to be made, this cycle of obsessions and compulsions must be so extreme that it consumes a lot of time, more than an hour every day, causes intense distress, or gets in the way of important activities that the person values. Now, obsessions are thoughts, images, or impulses that occur over and over again and feel outside of the person's control. Research has shown that most people have unwanted, intrusive thoughts from time to time, but in the context of OCD, these intrusive thoughts come frequently and trigger anxiety, fear, and or disgust that just gets in the way of day-to-day functioning. Now, compulsions are repetitive behaviors or thoughts that a person uses to neutralize or counteract the obsession, essentially trying to make their obsessions go away. In most cases, individuals with OCD feel driven to engage in compulsive behavior and would rather not have to do these time-consuming and often torturous acts. Rather than being a source of pleasure, people with OCD perform compulsions because they believe they are necessary to prevent negative consequences and or to escape or reduce anxiety or the presence of obsessions. That is essentially what the O and C stand for in OCD. The obsessions and compulsions of OCD are ego dystonic, as people with OCD are distressed by the content of their intrusive thoughts and would truly prefer not to do the compulsive behaviors or have the compulsive thoughts that keep their distress at bay for a moment. A big common misconception about OCD is that people just have some OCD. You know, like I have an OCD tendency of cleaning my room. No, girl, everybody has to clean their room. Most people prefer to be in a clean space. Most people like things tidy. This article mentioned it has to take up like a good chunk of your time, you know. It's kind of hard to explain this in a better way, but the thing is like my mind just is almost always on. Like it's really hard for my brain to be quiet. Like shut the fuck up. Oh, it did it this time. I'm kidding. I mean, that's not really necessarily how it works, but I just feel like my mind is the best way to describe it in my experience is that my brain is just so overactive and to the point where it feels overwhelming. It feels overwhelming, and like it mentions again, it feels out of my control. I hate that I have these thoughts and they're so repetitive. Oh my god. I just know like I've thought about everything ever all the time at once. Whatever. Like I just have to think about so many things all the fucking time. It's like genuinely exhausting. It takes up a lot of mental energy and thus takes up a lot of physical energy as well, leading me to be exhausted quite often. But yeah, that's just my experience. Now, some statistics about OCD. The onset is typically around puberty, like 7 to 12 years old, or in your late teens to early adulthood, aka like right now, my early 20s. I think I developed OCD at puberty. I'm not gonna lie. I think this is not something new to me. I think I've had it for quite a while. That's my personal prediction. But another interesting fact is that OCD is in about 1 in 40 people, 1 in 40 adults. They either have OCD or will develop it at some point in their lives. Really, really interesting. It makes me realize that OCD is a lot more common than I thought. The cause of OCD is obviously unknown, like with a lot of other psychological disorders. It's kind of hard to differentiate what is caused by OCD and what causes OCD in the brain. And studies have also shown that OCD can run in families, like I have found, which was also another big catalyst piece of information for me, learning that it can be genetic. Between 10 to 20% of children who have a parent with OCD will develop OCD themselves. So it's not like a very clear cut, if you have OCD, you probably got it from your parent. It's actually not that common, but there is a little bit of a genetic link. And environmental factors also play a role in whether or not you develop OCD or what kind of OCDs you develop. Despite the fact that we don't know what causes OCD, we do know how to treat it, luckily enough. Thank God I was born in the generation that knows how to solve this shit, okay? Not solve it, it's a lifelong condition, but you can treat it and manage it and become an expert, become a master in OCD. So naturally, I bring it up to my therapist at the time and I tell her, hey, I think I have OCD. And so in our session, she asks me a bunch of questions about basically trying to figure out if I potentially do have OCD. Now, my therapist that I had at the time was also not qualified to diagnose me. So she she asked me these questions and she was very on the fence. She was like, a lot of your answers sound like they could be anxiety, but they also could be OCD. I don't know. But she also gave me this big misconception about OCD, which is that the compulsion aspect of OCD had to be physical. She told me that. She was like, your compulsions have to be physical. I have now learned, and also as I read in this article right here, they can also be mental. You can have also mental compulsions, but the thing is, I have both. I do have both. But I don't think I did a good job of describing to her my compulsions. It was still very fresh in my mind. I was still figuring this all out, and so I don't know if I expressed myself the best to her, but essentially she asked me if I wanted an official assessment. I said yes, and then I had to go back to the Kaiser Gauntlet. Oh my god, did I talk about the Kaiser Gauntlet yet? I don't think I did. Okay, let's talk about the Kaiser Gauntlet. Okay, is this a real thing? No, but it's how I like to describe the Kaiser Mental Health Department, okay? It's a fucking gauntlet. It's an obstacle course. It is a beast to be reckoned with. Now, again, like I said, I'm so grateful and privileged to have access to mental health care and to have such first world problems and complaints about the fucking wait times of the Kaiser phone network or whatever. But it truly is very demotivating. You have to be so motivated. You have to be so motivated and such a self-advocate for yourself in order to get anywhere with Kaiser. So I get this referral from my therapist and it says got a referral for medication management. Whoa. When did we talk about medication, girl? When did we talk about medication? Because I just wanted to be diagnosed with a silly little 3-letter disorder, okay? I just want to be told I have OCD and I just want to be told I have OCD, basically. And I got referred for medication management. I was like, whoa, what the fuck? And this is when I learned that the process of getting medication through Kaiser, which I was not seeking at the time, the process of getting medication through Kaiser is very, in my opinion, weird. You have to have 2 different trials of medications prescribed by your primary care doctor before you can see your psychiatrist or see a psychiatrist. Oh, all right. I don't think my primary care doctor can diagnose me with OCD, okay? And also, first of all, I wasn't even fucking seeking medication. I was seeking clarity. I'm seeking clarity. I mentally go back to that video of Nikki Caron, and she had a sponsorship, I believe, or she is sponsored by NOCD, which is this organization that essentially makes access to OCD treatment easier, more accessible. So I go to the NOCD website and they actually have like a free online survey quiz, little questionnaire to determine not necessarily if you have OCD, but like I guess without seeking a professional, like, do you maybe have OCD? And so I took this quiz and it told me that I have moderate OCD. Oh, okay. Like moderate. Like at least it's not severe, I guess. One thing about me is I have thought I have had so many different mental disorders. It's actually low-key a little bit embarrassing how many different ones I've thought I've had. But I have taken a handful of these, like, do you have this disorder quizzes online. This is the first time I've gotten anything that's not maybe/mild. It was moderate. Okay. And moderate sounds like, oh, I very comfortably definitely have this disorder. And it also told me the different types of OCD that I have potentially. Oh my God. It was so fucking many. Like, it's not funny. And then I was like, okay, shit. I actually really maybe probably do have OCD. And low key at this point, I've just kind of accepted, like, I probably definitely have OCD. The thing is, like, my brain works so fast and I feel things with such urgency. I feel that I must solve things with such urgency that I basically figured out I had OCD before even seeking proper treatment or help for OCD. And after taking that quiz, it was really the final, like, yeah, you have this, girl. So I wait a couple days to call an OCD to book an appointment. Why? Because my OCD spiral was late at night on a weekend, and I'm a respectful person. Okay. I like to call organizations or companies, whatever, within business hours on a business day. So I waited until it was like a cool Monday, 12 p.m., like a normal time to call people, right? Like I'm thinking, like, okay, I need to call them at a normal time. So I call them. And it was honestly a pretty smooth, easy process. Unfortunately, they sent me back to the Kaiser Gauntlet because I needed to get a referral for my insurance to cover it, whatever. But I go through that, I get my referral, I text my previous therapist a cute little goodbye message because, like, you don't actually know that much about OCD. And also, like, you definitely cannot help me with my OCD. So thank you for all your help, but peace out. And this is when I learned that therapy for OCD, well, first of all, this is going to sound like an ad read, but the gold standard of therapy, do you know how many times I've heard this? Oh my God, I've heard this so many times. The gold standard for OCD treatment is ERP therapy. ERP stands for Exposure and Response Prevention. It is proven most effective first-line therapy for OCD in adults, children, and adolescents. ERP is a specific type of cognitive behavioral therapy backed by decades of research. Anyways, blah, 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 blah. So ERP therapy is essentially the gold standard of OCD treatment. It's very evidence-based and it's proven to be quite effective for most people. Another thing about treatment, I kind of implied this a little bit earlier about medication management, but OCD is actually, there's a lot of different medications that can treat OCD, and I don't know every single one, but OCD is also quite commonly treated by SSRIs, which stand for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And if you don't know what SSRIs are, you probably are not depressed. Or maybe you are and you're just not medicated. But SSRIs are essentially like the standard antidepressant medication, but apparently they also help treat, they help treat a broad variety of things, but they're most commonly prescribed for depression, but they also treat OCD. So that's another thing. Those are like the top two treatment options for OCD: therapy and medication. And I will also like to say that medication alone typically does not help you manage your symptoms. It can help a little bit, but it's most effective when paired with therapy. So therapy is always the best route to go. If you want to add medication later on, that's always an option. I have my OCD assessment scheduled, and I think it was like a week later I had my first appointment. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, apparently ERP is most effective when it's done twice a week. Oh my fucking God. Hearing this made me fucking feel insane, okay? It made me feel like vindicated because, like, okay, yes, like you really have something like seriously wrong with you that needs to be treated twice a week. But also I was going from having therapy twice a month to having it twice a week. That's like a crazy increase in sessions weekly. Thank God I decided to start all this shit during the summer because can you imagine me like having to add like that into my schedule, factor that in? I mean, I'm going to factor it in now, but like, holy shit. Can you believe that you need to meet with a therapist twice a week? That low-key sounds like I'm insane. Maybe telling people that I have OCD makes them think I am a little insane, but being told that I need to have a therapist, like, it's just baffling. I actually like don't have the word. The following week, I had my first session with this therapist, and I also, oh my God, I appreciate that NOCD therapy, or maybe just ERP in general, is so hands-on, but it's also like so much fucking work. I had to do like five, this might be an exaggeration. I had to do like 5 20-minute fucking surveys asking me about a bunch of different shit. And I get it. It's because they're trying to diagnose you with something. Another important thing to note about an OCD actually is that even if you don't have OCD, if you have a adjacent related potential disorder, they also treat those because there's a lot of disorders that are not OCD but can have similar symptoms to OCD. And so if you have one of those as well, OCD can help treat you. Anyways, so I have to fill out a butt fucking ton of surveys before my first session. During my first session, I think within the first 30 minutes, I get told that I have OCD. She's like, yeah, you meet all the qualifications to have OCD. Okay. Well, I mean, I kind of already knew, but like, thank you for telling me. That was low-key quick. Like, why were we so quick to figure out that I have OCD? Like, you know, like it took me 21 years to figure out that I have OCD, but you figured it out in like 30 minutes. I'm honestly in the very, very early steps of ERP therapy. Like, I've only like dipped my pinky toe into it. So I really could not tell you about like my personal review of ERP therapy. I'm sure like in a year from now or 6 months from now, I'll give you guys like an actual therapy update of how it's been going in my experience, especially because it honestly sounds very scary because I didn't really explain how ERP therapy works. They very much emphasize psychoeducation. They very much emphasize psychoeducation at NOCD, and I really appreciate it. Essentially, exposure and response prevention ERP, it essentially is a type of therapy where they expose you to your OCD triggers, okay? The things that trigger you to have these OCD fears and thoughts in your head, they trigger you to them. And then they give you these response prevention measures to stop yourself from completing the compulsions. That's essentially how ERP works, because the worst part about OCD is not necessarily the obsessions. Well, it kind of is, but it's more so the compulsions, because your compulsions are what lead to your obsessions coming back, you know? And it's like this cycle. OCD is a cycle. You do your compulsion, but then you're going to get triggered again anyways. And so like if you're able to combat acting on your compulsions, you will reduce your fear, or you will reduce your like visceral reaction and distress levels. Anyways, I don't really think I described that the best, but I really appreciate that it's so hands-on. So I did a bunch of surveys for my first like week of ERP therapy. I didn't really start ERP yet, but my second week is when we actually kind of started ERP, or like started the laying the groundwork of ERP. I had to basically list my OCD fears, and this is done in multiple parts. First, I kind of would name like the what if statement. Like, for example, to the sexuality OCD, like, what if I'm a lesbian? What if, you know? I'm just going to use this as my example. What if I'm a lesbian? And then from there, you have to list your triggers. And I had to list 5 different triggers for each thing. So for example, one trigger of this would be like seeing like a happy woman loving woman relationship. You know what I mean? Like a happy sapphic relationship that makes me think I'm a lesbian. Like if I see that, oh, I'm a lesbian. It just, they sound so silly and so irrational to say out loud. And I think that's a part of the healing process of therapy, like realizing how many of my thoughts are silly and stupid. Anyways, so that's like an example of a trigger. And from there, you need to essentially list out examples of compulsions that you would do. For me, it's a lot of like, for this example, it's a lot of rumination, kind of figuring out like, okay, let's think on this. Am I a lesbian? Am I attracted to my boyfriend? Like, you know, those type of thought processes. This is an example of like a mental compulsion. And then from there, you have to list your ultimate fear in regards to this like OCD thought, you know? What's your ultimate fear? My fear would be like that I am a lesbian and I don't love my boyfriend and I'm being a liar and deceitful and whatever. That's just an example. Throughout the process of therapy, they will create exposures for you to expose yourself to your fears so that you can conquer them. But yeah, I'm very, very new to this. This is like the part where I'm just kind of like, okay, let me just talk about recent events in regards to my OCD. So starting ERP or just starting like OCD therapy and like knowing that you have OCD, it's very reassuring and validating, but also it's very overwhelming and scary to finally like target my deepest, darkest fears and obsessions and like all these like my deepest issues that truly impact me on a daily basis. To finally start tackling them was is kind of scary and kind of daunting, and it takes up a lot of mental space, especially filling out all of these questionnaires and forms about my behaviors and habits and like obsessions, filling out these things. It takes up so much time. Despite, like, on top of meeting twice a week, I also have all of this fucking OCD homework to do. And so it was a lot mentally and emotionally, and it led me to having it led me to having my second ever panic attack last week. Yes, I had a panic attack. It was honestly quite cinematic. I will describe it to you guys. I was in the bathroom at my boyfriend's house, and we stopped by because we thought that his dad wasn't home, and so we were going to feed his like pets, his animals. And it turned out his family was actually there, which was cool. It was fine. I wasn't expecting it, but it was fine. And I honestly genuinely don't know what came over me, but I felt like I had to go to the bathroom, and then boom, I just like started to have like a mini panic attack. It honestly was not as bad as the first panic attack I ever had because it wasn't in front of an audience, but it was a quite cinematic panic attack because I was in the bathroom and I could hear my boyfriend was drumming in the garage because he has like a drum set. He was drumming in the garage, and then in the other room, I heard his Lolo on fucking Facebook Reels. You know those rubber ducks? It was like that noise over and over again with the drums and me having a panic attack. Picture it. It was low-key cinema. It was kind of cinematic. Like, I kind of was enjoying it a little bit. I think that's what helped me like calm down, because I was like, this is so fucking funny and like cinematic that it's like kind of enjoyable almost, so it kind of made me stop having a panic attack. It was like a really small one. And I remember like describing what happened after to my boyfriend. It was hilarious. So yeah, that is honestly where I'm at right now with my OCD. I wish I had something more uplifting or helpful to say, but it really is a journey. It took me 21 years to figure out I have OCD, and I'm just at the very beginning of my OCD journey. Oh, wait, I know what I wanted to say though. I want to try medication because I think when I first discovered that OCD like had medication treatment options, I wanted to do it. And then once I actually got diagnosed with OCD, I didn't want to try medication because I was like, this is actually kind of scary. But after having my panic attack, I went back on team medication. So I do have an appointment with my primary care doctor coming up, and I will be asking for meds promptly, which I also know is a whole nother fucking journey. Like, if OCD is a journey, finding the right medication is a fucking journey, okay? Obviously, So one of my compulsions, I think I mentioned, is researching. You know that I researched the ever living fuck about medications, okay? Like OCD medication experiences. I researched the ever living fuck. It actually terrified me though, because I feel like medications and people's experiences are such a mixed bag, and it's such a journey to find the right one that works for you. And I also wanted to talk about medication in this video because I feel like there's also a lot of stigma against medication, and if it improves my quality of life, then I have no shame about needing it. I literally have been asking every single person I know that is on medication, which is not a lot of people. But I've been asking every person I know that's on medication about their experiences to like reassure myself almost about like going through with this process. But I really, at the end of the day, I really just do want to like nip my OCD in the butt like as fast as possible. I know therapy combined with medication would be my personal best option. I know that medication is not for everybody, but just imagining what my life could be like without OCD, like being on the other side of my OCD just sounds like to be an OCD conqueror and a master level OCD person just sounds like I don't know. I can't even imagine what my life would be like without OCD, because the thing about having OCD or discovering that you have OCD is recognizing that most of your thoughts are OCD thoughts. Like 90% of my thoughts are OCD related. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe 80 to 90, depends on the day, depends on my mood. It's like most of my thoughts. It takes up so much mental energy. I just can't imagine what my life would be like without that mental baggage, without having to do these compulsions, and without having to spend hours a day ruminating. Like what could I do? What could I achieve? The world is not ready for me once I found the right medication and I'm done with my ERP therapy. Okay? Like the world is actually not ready for me. It's been so affirming to learn that I am living below my potential, and my potential is exponential. I have so much that I can do and achieve, and I feel so strong and powerful and validated knowing that I have OCD, because I know that it's something that's treatable. And while I'm going to have OCD for the rest of my entire life, I will be able to better handle it and not just waste hours of my day giving in to my OCD. That is my piece on OCD. I hope that this has helped anybody, inspired anybody, gave someone comfort, gave someone validation, did something for someone somewhere, hopefully. Every time I've learned about another person in the world having OCD, it has been a comfort to me, truly. It's just really been comforting to know that there's so many people out there who understand my experiences. To close this out, yeah, it's really just been comforting to learn about more people in the world. You know, a lot of like public facing figures and celebrities and influencers, whatever. Learning about them having OCD has honestly been just like such a huge comfort for me, because it is quite isolating to discover something about yourself that makes you feel different. And despite for so much of my life me yearning to find this answer, despite me wanting to find this answer, it's still been scary to navigate my life knowing I have OCD, and very uncertain as well. Know that I'm strong and resilient and I will come out the other side. I know I'll come out the other side of my OCD journey feeling stronger, more resilient, and more capable than ever. But still quite scary to like literally face your biggest fears and tackle your debilitating mental disorder that you've had for your entire life. To figure out and discover who I am on the other side of this is a journey that I am really excited to be on. I hope this helped someone somewhere in any way, shape, or form. I will have the links to everything I mentioned in this video down below, and probably more, just because I think that mental health resources should be quite available and accessible and all those stuff. It's just been nice to get that off my chest and share with you guys. I almost feel like I am learning how to be a person again, you know? With my OCD, it just feels like I'm really like retraining my brain. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's amazing to restart your life in your 20s or at any phase in your life. There's so many opportunities to have a fresh start and change and learn things about yourself. So I'm really excited to start this journey, and I will be keeping you guys updated on how things go for me. So if you enjoyed this episode and stuck with me through the end, then maybe please consider subscribing. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I really felt called to make it. It felt really important for me to share my experiences that I've been going through, even if they've been hard or scary or uncertain. I wanted to, if I can just help one person feel less alone, or feel more confident in telling people about something about themselves or seeking out treatment or help or whatever, that's the goal. That's the goal. Just helping one person. Also, if you stayed this long into the video, thank you so much for watching this like crazy long episode. I shared a lot about myself today, and I'm sure I will continue to share more, especially about OCD, because I think that it's just so misrepresented and also underrepresented despite it being so common in the population. So I will be the voice of OCD, okay? I don't mind. I will be the fucking OCD girl, okay? Like, I don't care. Love you guys so much. See you next week. Bye.